Go.
Right, so hi everybody. I'm here today with Graeme Beever, who's a customer insight specialist. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, customer insight, customer experience.
Cool.
Anything to do with the customer, I guess, Ash. So lots of different things. You can start a customer journey even before you've interacted with a business or with a person, and you can finish it very quickly as well. Cool. So yeah, I'd like to bring some of that to you today.
Brilliant. So what's your background? Let's start with that, Graeme. Tell everybody how you started.
Where have I been? So lots of my experience, I've been working with lots of big brands. So I've been lucky enough to work with the Carphone Warehouse, spent 13 years with them, was an area manager in central London, so lots of sales and boom times. I've worked abroad, so I've worked in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. I've worked in Portugal and Holland for Carphone Warehouse and some mobile phone retailers. I've been a regional sales manager for a bed company, and then more recently I spent 5 years working for Apple, and then 2 years working for Tesla and Elon Musk.
Wow.
So great businesses, lots of ethos about the customer, and successful in their own right, and generally successful because they focus on what should we do, what's the right thing to do, rather than the bottom line and the profit.
Because I know when we first met, I was kind of aware of all of these big name brands that you were dropping out all the time, but actually hearing them in a list in a short period of time is really, really impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky to work with these brands and share those experiences. And I think that's why I'm here today, really, to kind of share some of that with you and the listeners, and see if there's anything that anyone can benefit from it. Not everybody gets the chance to be on the inside as well as the outside, and we're all aware of the iPhone and we're all aware of phones and other things, but it's what goes into it that sort of makes it happen. So if there's something I can help people with, then let me share. I can't share any secrets because I don't really have any anymore.
Because that's what everybody's thinking. Yeah. We're going to hear all of this, of course.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to start with a story, which I think it's one that you've heard before, but I think it will be valuable just to kind of set the scene. So my wife Kay, who's in the office, in my office, I should make that clear.
Of course, yeah.
She's borrowing that while we're in here. She went out for dinner with a very close friend of hers about 18 months ago. It was cold, so maybe, well, it doesn't really matter, 14, 15 months ago. And a big brand restaurant, well known, Brasserie Blanc.
Yes, Raymond's.
Okay, Raymond's in London.
Yep. And
her and Russell go back a long time, really close friends. They go out for dinner all the time, and they like decent restaurants. Okay, it's not no McDonald's for them.
Can't blame.
So they turn up at the restaurant, and there's a sign outside the door of the restaurant that basically says closed for private party.
Ooh.
Now, Russell's an international IP expert. He basically breaks up large companies for a living, so he's not afraid of a bit of confrontation.
Yes.
And he wanders down the stairs, and as he gets, I get quite animated about this, I'll put my coffee down for a minute, but as he gets down the stairs and approaches the kind of concierge desk, the waitress comes out from behind, or the concierge comes out from behind the desk, says, Mr. Payne, he's like, yes, how are you this evening? Take a seat for me. So he and Kay sit down on this sofa. She goes back round to the desk, brings out a bottle of, 2 glasses of champagne, gives them to them, and basically says, we're really sorry, we messed up. When the booking was made, we had a new kid in, basically, and he didn't realise there was a private party on because he didn't check the other screen.
Yeah.
And so if it's okay with you, we've got a taxi on its way. Okay, you finish champagne, take your time, and the taxi will take you to our sister restaurant, I think in Bond Street, where there's a table there for you. Now, there are lots of ways that companies get things wrong, and they clearly got this right. So they get in the taxi, and it wasn't just a taxi; it was a car. It was quite nice. They're drinking; they haven't quite finished their glass of champagne. Just take it with you, So they're drinking champagne, driving through London, in this car. It's all very nice now. It's a nice experience.
Yeah.
They get to the restaurant, say who they are. Yep, come in, not a problem. Really, really good, well-positioned table. Bottle of champagne waiting for them as well. And at the end of the meal, they wipe the bill.
Wow.
Now, I'm telling that story.
Yep.
And I guess my question for you today, and the kind of what I think this would be really useful to talk around and to sort of unpick, is we are going to screw up. As businesses, we're going to make mistakes. Yep. We're going to get things wrong. So how do you take what Brasserie Blanc have done there and turned such a potential difficult, contentious situation into something that's so positive that's still being talked about 15, 18 months later.
Absolutely.
And I suspect I'll continue to do so as well to anyone who will listen, because it's such a wonderful story.
I think it is, and thanks for sharing it, because I think what you've highlighted there is the opportunity to get things wrong is rife, and people do, but if you're honest and you admit it and you fix it in a more positive way, your story will generate even more traction, because your wife probably would have had a really nice meal, but actually had a really good experience as well as a really nice meal. And I think the point of the free meal or not actually is irrelevant.
Yeah.
She would have probably been quite happy to pay for it by the sounds of it. So what to learn from that is, first of all, admit you are going to make mistakes, because if you don't, you're never going to learn. And that's one of your key points for your team and your training. But I think how you fix that in a positive way, firstly with honesty, with empathy, and with a clear plan of communication to that client. And that client was one-to-one. It could have been over the phone, it could have been viral web chat or something, but use a couple of basic guideline principles to get something right.
Yeah.
And also make sure that you get some feedback at the end of it, because if it still isn't right, then you need to know why for the next person, or at least for that couple that are dining, because everything there is a prime example of how you do it, even when you're up against it. So you have to be able to obviously act in the moment. It sounded like that restaurant were prepared for what they were doing, and luckily they had an action plan and a plan B. But they were honest. They apologised. They made you feel welcome. They still made you feel special, because they put you in a car and gave you champagne and took you to the other restaurant. So you've probably gone from a really excited point when you got there to being really disappointed to actually slowly climbing back up and being really impressed, had your meal, and then it's free. Brilliant. Then you're going to go and tell all your friends, and you'll be a massive promoter of that restaurant.
So,
and tell everybody
turning
about
a complaint into a raving fan.
Absolutely.
Is what they've done. So how does a business go about creating that experience? And we'll talk later on, I hope, about just the general principles of providing a good experience. But I think this is a really good place to start, because we are, as you said, we are going to have, we are going to make mistakes in our business. So where do you start with sitting down and saying, right, if this happens, then we do this? Where do you even begin with that? Because there are so many things that could go wrong.
Absolutely right. I think if you look at some basic business principles, you need process. That's one of those 3 Ps, let's call them. You've got the people, you've got the process, and you've got your product. So if you look at the process, you have a process for how you handle things, in your day-to-day transactions, in your your back office systems, etc. But have you actually got a process for when stuff hits the fan? Have you ever had to deal with that before? And if you haven't, you're probably not going to know. So why don't you ask somebody? Why don't you get your friends, family, trusted advisors to come and pressure test your business in one way or another? Give them something for free, or make something go wrong and see what happens. And then get your trusted advisors to tell you, okay, if you could have done this for me, that would have been really good. So if you've got that opportunity to do that, do it. And if I could use your business as an example, you may do your workshops and they're all fantastic, but they probably weren't always fantastic. No, of course they weren't, Ash. But you could get a couple of people that you trust to come along first of all and test a new product or test a new offering and give you feedback, so that okay, well, these people saw this. Let me just be prepared for at least a little bit of that, and that will give you as a business owner or just a person some confidence to go, okay, I've been in this situation. Let me just see if I can put myself to other situations. So I think, back to your original question, have some sort of process in place. And if you're a one-man band or you're a team, you need to make sure that everybody is on board with what they can do. If you're lucky enough to have a team working with you, ask them the question as well. What's their experience like and how do they feel? Because ultimately, you can gain from it, and you should gain from it.
So, the thing that comes to mind that jumps out at me from what you've said there is obviously the process stuff. But also the piece about feedback, because you're right. When I first ran our first event, we learned so much. But the reason we learned so much is because we asked for feedback. And and one of the things that we learned is not to ask for feedback once the event is finished via a third party app like SurveyMonkey, others are available type thing. Because whilst as a tool it's functional and works really, really well, people have gone, they're finished. They're not thinking about it anymore.
They're too busy.
So what we've started doing is giving out forms at the end of the meeting for people to fill in, and we get one, a much higher return, two, a lot more detail, and three, we can start to act on some of those things within minutes, let alone hours. So I come across a lot of businesses that don't ask for feedback, and you must as well. So what's the block? What do you think's the reason behind that?
I think you've raised a really good point about feedback, because I think we've all had experience of filling out forms, leaving reviews of 5 or 10 stars or whatever it is, and actually just asking for feedback is sometimes a challenge for some businesses because they don't want to get negative feedback. And I work with different sectors at the moment, and one sector in particular, they don't really want feedback from their customers because they think they're great, which is quite scary. And that's not all of the businesses within that sector, but some of them. And for me to engage with them and help them, I'm wasting my time. But if you're going to ask for feedback, first of all, don't make it War and Peace. Okay, I've been lucky enough to see your forms, and I think they're very simple. And you shouldn't really have any more than 5 questions. Because people at the end of the day, when you're asking for that feedback, they want to get on. They want to leave you succinct feedback.
And it's the end of the day.
And it's the end of their day. They've given you 8 hours of their time, or wherever it is. So think about the customer in mind, and also think about the questions you're asking. Are you going to get value from that feedback? Are you ticking boxes, or are you asking them to write paragraphs? So we've all had feedback that's come through. Actually, only this morning, and no word of a lie, I was doing some work for a large, let me just get a specialist motorist organisation, let me call it that, who sell very high-end vehicles. And they sent me a form after making an inquiry, and the form was so badly written, all about GDPR, that A, I didn't want to fill it out, and B, it gave me a bad impression of this certain car brand that starts with Bent and ends in Lee. But it was just horrific, and I've been lucky enough to be able to give them that feedback to say, you can't expect people to fill out this form that's in a PDF that they have to print out, that they have to write on, they have to then, I think they had to fax it back, in all honesty, because they wanted it back in 1994. But that gave me a bad impression of that brand, because the way that they wanted that feedback was really badly
putting barriers in the way.
Absolutely, barriers was right there. So think about the feedback you're going to ask it irrespective. Make sure you get something, because if you don't get something, somebody will go on Google, or they'll go on TripAdvisor, or they'll find a Facebook page or wherever you are that you've forgotten about, and they'll leave something, and you won't get an opportunity to fix that before it goes there. So,
because there are a lot of businesses that obviously open themselves up to feedback online, and that has its own inherent dangers. We know all about the stories of TripAdvisor and so on and so forth, and restaurants being hijacked by the owners of other restaurants and leaving, B&Bs, I think, especially suspect of this. And I had my own 2 weeks ago, which shocked me, because I don't have a huge number of Google reviews, but we've got, I don't know, a dozen or whatever it is. And it's probably something I need to work on, but LinkedIn, Facebook, all the rest of it. And I'm looking at it going, I can't understand why I've got a 4.7 average, because last time I looked it was 5, because why would anybody not give me a 5-star review on Google? And I looked, and there was a 1-star review.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was just a 1-star review with no comments from somebody who's never done any business with me, never interacted with me. I checked, he's not connected with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter. I have no idea who he is. I don't know where he's come from. I don't even know if he's part bot. But that 1-star review, which somebody might argue is malicious for the hell of it, can be quite damaging. So, I don't know. I wrote back.
Well done.
And I just said, can't remember the guy's name or girl's name, and I just wrote back and said, thank you so much for your 1-star review. I really would appreciate understanding the reasons behind it, given that you've never done any work for us and we have no idea who you are. I look forward to your response. Not had anything, of course, but it's kind of a subtle way of saying that actually this isn't real, and ignore it.
Absolutely. I think though you've raised a really valid point, because the internet and the review service out there, the review systems out there, they are widespread. They are many of them, and you need to be interacting with them. You can't ignore them. And unfortunately, in this day and age, people become very big and strong behind these little screens, don't they?
Yeah, keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warriors and trolls, and that's another conversation for today.
Totally, yeah.
But I think you've done the right thing, first of all, by replying to it, because I can read that reply and I can see how well you deal with it. So don't ignore them, and ask the person to connect with you directly, even putting some personal details out there that hopefully they'll connect with. Because if I've read that as a third party and I've seen that you've responded to it, I know that you're going to take that opportunity to answer the feedback and take that on board. I had a client a couple of months ago who had a similar example, and it was actually on Amazon. He sells products on Amazon. And the way that he had worded his reply had then generated feedback on the way that he dealt with it. And he actually got business from other people who said, I really like the way you dealt with that reply. Do you mind if you could talk to me about this?
Yeah,
so
that's really cool.
Be conscious that you're always going to be out there, and that will be recorded. Don't ignore it. That's the worst thing you can do. But please make sure that you interact and you reply, because people will read that and they'll read into it. I think also nowadays, if people do see a 1-star reply and all the others are 5 and 4.8, you kind of have to use your common sense and go, okay, you've been trolled, or somebody's pressed the wrong button. I think they were looking for Rash Taylor rather than Ash Taylor.
Possibly.
So just bear that in mind. People generally use their common sense.
And I think the problem is because it's numbers based, we all look for perfection and really high stuff, and you just 4.7 is.
Yeah.
But
I'm a bit scared sometimes, if you don't mind me saying. 5-star, perfect.
How many friends and family have you got to
Absolutely,
write those reviews?
And actually think about it. You go on Amazon, and I'll use that name again, I apologise, but you look at the reviews and you see 34 or 50 5-star, and they're all perfect. And for me, that's a seed of doubt in my mind. And I go, okay, am I going to trust these 50 people that I've never met that give it all 5-star reviews? And you go into a bit more detail of delving. And I appreciate if it's a bigger ticket purchase and a holiday or a car or something, you might do. But sometimes it becomes a bit.
Well, I know Kay came across a thing a couple of years ago that she now lives by. That certain review sites, TripAdvisor is a really good example of where she uses this.
Yep.
Is she only looks at the 3-star reviews.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because her view is you're either going to get 5 stars, which is family and friend, or they had an amazing time.
Yep.
Or 1-star reviews tend to be detractors or people who are trying to cause problems, unless you really screwed up.
Yeah.
But actually, the kind of places we're staying, it's rare that somebody's going to be in that bank, so it's probably somebody trying to damage the business.
Yeah.
But if you look at the 3-star reviews, and think about yourself, if you're writing a 3-star review, then you have to justify that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really easy to ping a 5-star or a 1-star, but a 2 or a 3 or a 4, if you're writing a 4-star review, for example, you've got to almost give a reason why it's not 5.
Yeah.
And I think the same with 3. So you get the feedback both ways, what was great about it as well as what was not so great about it. And so that allows you to then make up your own mind.
Yeah, I agree.
That's been, and it's the same with books. On Amazon, we were talking about Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, who's the founder of Zappos and sold it to Amazon twice, I believe, which is quite a cool thing.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's quite smart. I'm pretty sure that's the story. But I think that whole principle of understanding that not everybody is going to be as kind and as generous as you could be, but knowing what the feedback is, that you can do something about it from reviews is really important.
I agree. And if you don't mind staying on the feedback loop for a moment, I think feedback through all stages of a process with a customer is key. But I think also you've got to think about it as an internal customer. So when you're taking somebody on to join your business,
staff,
you've got to think about that. It's key, because if you're a solo entrepreneur who's growing, you're going to need to take some people on. You need to give them a good experience.
Yes.
Ultimately, you need to recruit the right people as well. So it's a two-way thing. But if you're not checking in with them regularly, if you're not asking them how it's going, if you're not seeing how they're doing, if you're not gauging their feedback on where they are in their journey, well, they're going to fail and your business is going to fail. You're going to be back to minus square one. So I think that's also key, to think about the fantastic experience you deliver, but more so the employees that you train, you hire, you develop, because they are going to be the key to your future. And so many great ideas have come from employees who have been given the opportunity to spread their wings, make an input, drive some new stuff. And personally, I've been lucky enough to work with some fantastic people that just add value, and they add value because they've got the opportunity to deliver their experiences.
So you've used a phrase a couple of times now, which I understand. I want to explore a little bit more, which is journey. So, for people listening to this, watching this, they may be aware that the customer experience is an important thing.
Yep.
How do you if you're going to map this out yourself, if you're going to create a journey that you want in an ideal world, customers to experience as a positive one, how do you start?
Really good question. First of all, though, I think you need to understand the client that you're dealing with and what they want to achieve. So are they starting a business? Have they started a business? Are they looking at their teams? Are they looking at their processes? There's many different ways to look at it. I think to put it back to basics, we are in an era now where customer service is an expectation. We want and we shop where there is good service. Customer experience is the new marketing. So brands used to spend lots, and they still do spend lots on their brand, on their image, on their logos, etc. And that's still a thing. But you now have to spend money on your customers to tell you how your brand is doing, how your experience is being delivered. Because you may spend millions of pounds saying that we do this, but then if you don't deliver it, people are going to spend millions of pounds telling you don't, and they'll spend millions of pounds by going to the competition. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. We're in this era now where social media, the internet and deliveries and all that side of things has taken it away from a marketing perspective. And you now need a marketing plan, no doubt about it, but you need to make sure there's checks and balances in place with your end user and with your internal team to make sure you get to the right stage. So mapping out that journey will generally start with talking to some of your customers.
Yep.
Talking to your customers internally, so your team members or yourself. If it's you
Just
and I
you.
having a chat.
Yep.
I'll be asking you about your business, and we would be using those post-it notes to go through that journey. But those post-it notes and that journey, how that actually looks like is take me on a journey of feelings. Okay, it's feelings and experiences rather than actual process. So when you pick up the telephone, the potential client or customer is thinking, oh great, I've got through after 3 rings, fantastic. And then you tell them that they have to wait another 5 minutes and they're on hold in a digital waiting room. Oh God, are they going to hang up and go somewhere else? How are they feeling?
More Vivaldi spring.
Absolutely, yeah. There's that also needs to change. But yeah, it should be about the feelings and about the emotions. And once you've gone through that journey, towards the end of it, and it may be a positive outcome, it may be a negative outcome. But why did it get there? And why were people feeling that way? And then how can you fix that? So why did it happen like that? Do you have internal processes that are barriers to sales? No, you can't do that with me because I only charge for this hour, and you can't have that one free, or we can't deliver it. Try and avoid all of those barriers because they are going to hinder the customer journey. And I think that one of the biggest things that people still get wrong is speed. They'll think it's okay to respond 2, 3, 4 days later, especially when it's on a device or an internet-based or a web chat. People are there in the moment, on the way home, on the train. They want a response ASAP.
Well, chatbots are changing the landscape of customer interaction, because obviously even for a relatively small business, if you don't have lots of staff answering the phone all the time, 24 hour, you can set bots up that will at least take people part of the way down the journey for very little cost, relatively. Yeah. I suppose you could look at some of the costs and go, well, I've got set-up fees and stuff. But then the question I always say to people is, or the position I always put in front of people is, well, what does it cost you to lose a prospective customer?
Correct.
Because if you've got 20 people coming to your website and you're losing 18 of them because there's no one to talk to, and if that drops down to only losing 10 of them because 8 of them choose to interact with the bot, then you're up.
Yep.
And what's that customer worth and so on.
Yeah, I mean, even Facebook has bots. You type in a specific word to a bot, and I used one the other week, and this individual representing a company, it wasn't them, but they sent me a PDF with all the details that I wanted to know, and I'm happy with that, and I will use them in the future.
It's a start.
Absolutely, it's a great interaction. Great interaction.
So I'm just going back to what you were saying about this sort of starting point. So you're suggesting that if people wanted to sort of start thinking about how they want their interactions to look like, the starting point is to look at what they're actually doing first.
Yep.
So just kind of map out. I mean, we've played games and this sort of stuff before. Big sheets of wallpaper and post-it notes, or whiteboard can be really useful. But just I like using post-it notes because you can pick them up and move them around. So it's just map out your touch points. And then you said something about, which I fully agree with, which is build the existing experience around the feelings that people are having.
And never not turn your phone off.
I love that. We've finally got one.
I think I'm going to be paying a fine. Anyway, moving on.
It's all right.
Yeah,
we have a charity. It's good.
Thank you. Yeah. Moving on. Can we edit that out? Thank you. Start again.
So, what was that? Yeah. So, feelings.
Yep.
Feelings.
Yep.
So, how do you, if you're working on your own, one-man band, and you've got potential customers, clients, whatever. How do you begin to understand? I mean, I know you can go and talk to your customers, but obviously customers aren't always going to be honest and tell you how they feel. Absolutely. Unless you've done something wrong. It's usually, how did you feel there? Okay, or I'm really angry. It's very rare that there's anything in between.
Yeah.
So I want to understand more about this principle of, creating this map, this journey, set of stepping stones, whatever you want to call it, milestones, touch points, through feelings.
So I think first and foremost is, as a business owner, you've got a lot of responsibilities, you're very busy trying to do the best, grow your business and drive your business. And the things that you started off on day one might not be the things on day 365 or, 720, 900, whatever it's going to be. So you probably had some things in place, and it might be a telephone number, a website, a process that worked for you, and they might not work today. So first question to ask yourself is, when did you go and check them? When did you phone your own number? When did you check your voicemail?
That's scary, isn't it?
It is scary, and my phone works obviously, but is the voicemail message still current?
Yeah.
Your website, when you make an inquiry, where does it go? Because it used to go to Jane. Jane doesn't work for you anymore.
No.
That new Facebook page you set up, it gets directed to Ryan, but Ryan is on holiday.
Yeah.
So just have a quick sense check, I think, and it will probably take you a morning or an afternoon, or get somebody independent or a friend or a family member to just do that and see what the experience is like, and then report back to you. Or obviously you can call some professionals like myself to do that on a bigger scale, and then we can give you some feedback and say, hey, your business is fantastic and you still do this really well, but here are some opportunities. And it'll be with those opportunities that we'd like to kind of build that map. So if it was from your website, if it was from your telephone, if it was from Ryan or Jane who've joined you 6 months ago, that will be the kind of starting point. Because if you don't measure it first and foremost, you're not going to be able to make any positive actions.
Yeah, and you can't judge whether the experience has improved or not if you don't have a
absolutely
a base point.
And you'll be judging as a business owner your sales, won't you? The amount of clients you've got, or repeat clients. And if you're lucky enough to have a baseline of clients that you talk to regularly and that you can trust, call them and ask them their feedback. They'll be a fantastic starting point to help you develop your business. They'll have some great ideas themselves. You might even get a collaboration going where you can work out a referral, a network, or actually get some feedback together. But ultimately you're going to need to have some sort of measure in place to be able to get a starting point to move on from.
See, that's a really good point, because it's something I did in my old business. Was I used to take my old tennis business, we had a lot of mums. I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but they predominantly looked after the kids after school activities. So my market was not the children, the parents of those children, and specifically the mums. So our avatars and everything were all built around, we had Charlotte, I've forgotten her name then. At the time she was 34, she's probably 45 now. We moved her on, and we knew what car she drove, we knew what magazine she read, all that sort of stuff. But I never really understood, because I'm not Charlotte. I'm not a 35-year-old woman. So the only way I could get any kind of insight at all was to actually go and take Charlotte out, or my equivalent of Charlotte's, out for coffee.
Yep.
And sit and talk to them and ask them those questions. What do you like about this? How was your experience here?
Yep.
What would you change if you were running my business? And it's the most scary question I've ever asked, because you sit there and wait for the storm, but you get so much. And I really think that people generally, business owners generally, are loath to ask that question. You know, what would you change if you were running my business?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the clients that we engage with, sometimes they don't want to know, and, you know. And I think, to coin a phrase I use regularly, I have to tell people that their babies are ugly. You know, because yeah, I know it's a horrible phrase, but it's true. You know, you set up this business. It was small, and you nurtured it through, and you know it's grown up. So but we have to go back and go, well, actually, no, there's some problems here. There's some issues, and have frank conversations. But you know what? Once that conversation has been had, and as you alluded to, you get such a great feedback, and they become an even bigger promoter of your business, because you're investing in them to help your business grow, but also you're going to get some valuable feedback from that customer that actually wants you to succeed, because they love your product, they love your service, they love you, you know. So ask them, use them, and I don't think I've ever been told by somebody, no, I can't do it anymore. Everyone's always got an opinion, haven't they? So don't be afraid to ask. How you ask is a different question. I think you just got to make sure you've got that relationship to meet for a coffee, pick up the phone, or do it via review. But you know, that's something for the sort of next stage to do. Yeah.
So what I'm starting to get from this very much is, in order to, one, you need to, as a business owner, recognise that the journey that you've put in place has probably just organically evolved, and that's a little bit like having a load of jigsaw pieces and just chucking them on the floor. You might put 2 or 3 of them together, but actually you're not creating a picture yet. So you need to understand, whether you're 6 months in or 6 years in, and probably especially if you're 6 years in, what it looks like now. Actually, you know, what's in place, and then go out and get feedback from the people that matter, i.e. the people that are giving you money, as to what could be better, how they would run it, where their challenges are, their irritations, their frustrations, what's good as well. But most of all, around that, understand how it's making them feel as they go through that process. So that's really, really useful stuff, and we talked all about reviews as well. So, and I know you can't give away secrets, but what I'm itching to ask is, you've worked for some obviously very well-known, good brands. You know, just unpicking 2 or 3 of them, what's the one lesson you might take, for instance, from Apple? What's the one, you know, lesson you might take from working as part of the Carphone warehouse here and abroad? Because I suspect the culture is different. So is there anything there that you can kind of...
Yeah, I mean, there's some fantastic. I think if I use Carphone as an example, I believe still to this day they use this mantra. They had the 5 fundamental rules, okay, and this was something that was brought on early on in the business when there weren't, you know, one on every high street. And the 5 fundamental rules were in everything that they did. They were stuck on the wall, but they weren't just stuck on the wall. People actually lived and breathed them, which was key. So when you joined the business, you were trained on them, you were tested on them. You know, as a manager, I'd be able to ask my team, how does this relate to rule number 1? And rule number 1 was, you know, treat customers as you yourself would like to be treated. Rule number 2, the reputation of the company is in the hands of every individual. I could go on. You know, they're still here 3 or 4 years later, maybe 3 or 4 hard years later. But you know, have something that is a baseline for your business that people can connect with, and internal people. And if you're happy enough to put it on the wall and put it on your website, then also you should be doing that as well, because then they can connect and go, well, that doesn't live with your values. And why doesn't it live with your values? And I was lucky enough at Carphone to be in board meetings with, you know, the senior people, and I would hear people actually arguing about, well, that doesn't sit with rule number 5. If we don't look after the customer, someone else will. Well, you're making this policy change, and that isn't right. And you know, things would be scrapped, and things would go back to it.
So you're talking about values, really, aren't you?
Absolutely, having values in your team, in your processes, in your products. I think that was key. And using another example from the corporate world, in Apple, you know, huge organisation, fantastically successful. Yes, they have amazing products, and all developed in secrecy. But you know, Steve Jobs' mantra and Tim Cook's was, ultimately that product needs to deliver a value to the end user. What is it going to do? Yeah, how is it going to change lives? And Apple have a credo. So there's 27 steps taken from originally the Ritz-Carlton Group. And we were talking about, you know, books earlier, and a fantastic book that I recommend is from Horst Schultz, who was the manager of the Ritz-Carlton for many years. I think he is still actually there. But his simple strapline is, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I like that.
That's just a nice, simple thing. And in Apple, the focus is all about the experience. Yeah, it's all about creating promoters. So as a manager in Apple, very rarely did I get to see the outputs, which I know sounds crazy, but you know, they had sales targets and they had numbers, but it was all about what are you going to do today to drive the experience, Ash? You know, where are you going to position yourself? Who are you going to be talking to? What meetings are you going to be having? What workshops do you want to run? What ideas have you got? And mentioning some of the team members there, some of the newer team members who just came in with this flurry of ideas, you know, you'd sit there and you sort of drink it all in and go, that's so great, yeah, we can make that happen, we can do that. And that ultimately delivered a fantastic experience, which meant people spent money and they told other people about it. As well as having a really robust recruitment process if you're going to grow your team. So, you know, being picky about who you choose and not just choosing the one who looks the best, but asking other people's opinion why they should join. So those are probably the two main things I'd take away.
That's really cool. Because I love the piece about value, because often when I work with businesses, you know, you want to go in and you talk to them and, you know, what's the mission, what's the vision, what are the values, and people really struggle to get their head around the commercial sense of having values.
Yes.
That actually what you talked about there really helps to tie the two things together, because if you are making decisions at board and day-to-day level, you know, at the customer-facing level, and you've got some kind of construct, and we'll call them values, against which to measure the effectiveness, and not just the effectiveness, but whether or not they should be done at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it really helps define a better experience, because you have laid out that this is what we stand for, and this is how we're going to deliver what we stand for, and this is why we're going to deliver what we stand for. And actually it is all about the customer, because without customers we don't have a business, and I think people forget that.
And it's very hard to do, you know, especially as you're starting your business, because there's so much that you want to get done. But ultimately, if you stick to those core values, and they will see you through. You know, you look at all the successful businesses out there, you can relate them to some kind of value or another. Be that ecologically, ethically, you know, sourcing responsibly, whatever that product is. Yeah, but even if you're a one-man band, have some values. Care about your customers. Care about yourselves. Care about your bottom line. Care about your suppliers. Whatever it's going to be. There can be values that you just add that mean things, but you have to stick to them, and it's not easy to do, and it might not always seem the right thing to do, but the more you do that and the more you work at that, it will become easier.
That's really interesting, because I think the values piece is really important. Actually, it's a really good way of summing up everything. That, you know, if delivering customer service for the sake of delivering customer service, or sorry, not even service, but a great experience is pointless. There has to be, and this might sound a little bit cynical, but there has to be a commercial reason behind it, because, you know, your business is only as good as your last interaction with the customer.
Absolutely.
And if those customer interactions are always improving, you're going to create fans. They're going to tell other people. Your business will grow. You will make more profit. If you're profitable, you can continue to deliver a great experience without cutting corners, and you kind of have that full circle approach then, don't you?
You do. I mean, and it won't be any surprise to you that we do a lot of work with marketing agencies to learn about return on investment. Not that they haven't done that already, but, you know, if you're going to spend £1 million on a marketing campaign, you want to make sure that you're going to get it to the right people, they're going to understand it, and they're going to be able to be converted into traffic to your website, your store, or whatever. So if you're not going to do that properly, you're wasting your £1 million on your marketing budget. So making sure that is done from the outset is key, and making sure that it's a key consideration. It doesn't have to be the only one, and I wouldn't expect it to be, but hopefully in this day and age more people understand that you need to have that sphere in your marketing budget, if nowhere else, to be able to test your product, to test your service, to test your offering, before you spend £1 million on doing it, or even £100. You know, whatever you're going to do, bear that in mind, please.
Yeah, that's really important. So that's been really useful.
Thank you.
Good chat. I've learned a few things, which is always great.
No worries.
It's always a good day when I've learned something. I think, otherwise, you know, back to school. So if obviously, if anybody wants to get hold of you, get in touch, what's the easiest way? We know you'll pick up your phone, or maybe not. But
yeah, maybe not when I'm with you, sadly. Yeah, I mean, you've got all the usual channels. You can Google me. My name is spelt quite uniquely, so it's Graeme Beever, which is Graeme, and then Beever.
Yeah.
I work for Insight6, so insight6.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Google, that's the easiest way, or you can call my phone, I won't answer because I'm doing an interview. Or hopefully Ash, look up Ash Taylor into our business, I think you'll find my links on there as well. But it's been a pleasure to share some information. I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Enjoyed that.
Thank you.